What's going on, guys? It's Mike again from BavhausTV, and today we have a Audi Q7 in here with a 3-liter T motor. This is the TFSI with the supercharger on it, and we're actually going to start a series of videos on this car. This is what the motor looks like. It's got a few things going on with it that we're going to take care of. Primarily, it's got a misfire, so we're going to show you guys how to diag a misfire on one of these cars. By doing some different things with compression testing and swapping around some coil packs, some spark plugs, some fuel injectors. We're going to be removing and reinstalling the supercharger. Along with that, doing the water pump, thermostat, and then the crankcase breather that's underneath. So this is going to be a pretty comprehensive job. We're going to cut it down into little segments. I'm going to kind of release things as we go. But yeah, first I'm going to get into it and show you guys what's going on with it and why it's even here in the first place. So instead of talking, let's just get into it. Alright, so we're inside the truck right now. Pretty much what we have as our first indication that something's wrong is when I put the key in the car and I start it up, you're going to see how long it takes for me to crank this car over. This condition is called extended crank, and it could be happening for a number of reasons. What we're going to focus on is specifically injector issues and actually carbon buildup on the intake valves themselves. So I'm going to start it up so you can show you. See how long that took to start up? It's almost like it has like a low battery or something. And then on top of that, we have a check engine light over here, and when I go to scan it, it comes up as a cylinder 2 misfire. So first thing we're going to do is drive it around. It was brought to me with no gas. I'm going to put some fuel in it. So we're going to get things warmed up because one of the first jobs we're going to do on this is going to be compression testing, and I want it to be warm when I do a compression test. So, I mean, you can kind of see this thing is not running that great. I don't know if you guys can see.
Oh, it's definitely shaking around.
She's shaking a bit. Let it jar is fine. Eventually, after this thing kind of shakes for a little bit, the car's actually going to turn the injector for cylinder 2 off entirely, and it's just going to be a closed cylinder. So the car will kind of smoothen out when you drive it, but it will be missing an entire cylinder, so that will affect it in a number of ways. So let's get moving. Alright, so we're driving around the Q7 right now. We just got some fuel in it, just a little bit, quarter tank, just so I can make it through the job, because we are going to be opening up some fuel lines. So there's going to be a little bit of leakage and stuff, and I need to be able to pull this thing back out once it's done. Anyway, so we're warming it up. We're not going too hard on it because there is that misfire, so we're just lightly cruising, getting the car up to temp. It's almost at that center line. So by the time we end up back in the garage, we should be warmed up nicely. Alright, so we got the Audi Q7 back in the shop, and what we're going to do now that it's warmed up, it's up to temp, is start pulling some pieces off and get ready to do our compression test. So the way these cylinders go are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So cylinder 2 is going to be our center on the passenger side. So that's the cylinder that's in question for a misfire. Before I actually start pulling stuff off, I'm going to scan the car and show you guys what I'm talking about, what's popping up with this. I actually cleared it not too long ago, and the code does come immediately back, so it is permanent, it is stored, it is a real thing happening that needs to be solved. The car's not going to just fix this on its own. So I'll show you guys what it comes up with on the Autel tool that you guys should be pretty familiar with by now. I tend to use that one a lot. So yeah, let me get it hooked up to the car. We'll show you what that is, and then right after that we're going to start digging in. Alright, so we're going to do key on, engine off, diagnostics right now. As you can see here, if you zoom in down to where my heat gauge is, we are right at temp. So that is pretty essential for doing a compression test and getting accurate readings. Alright. So now we're just going to get this thing started up. Might take a second. We'll get back to you when we're a little further along. We got 10 fault codes from the engine control module. It's pretty intense. I'm just gonna let it do a whole auto scan just so we can kind of see what's going on with everything. Alright, so I'll go through these all in a bit. I'm going to just show you the ones for the engine. Alright, so we have cylinder 2 misfire detected, that's active static. We have ignition activation cylinder 2 open circuit, that's passive sporadic. ABS control module readout, so that doesn't really matter. And then we have hide cylinder, that's going to be for cylinder 2. Oh, you know what? Most of these codes are actually from me doing a compression test a couple days ago. So cylinder 1 misfire, cylinder 3 misfire, multiple random cylinder misfire detected. Those are all due to me. So really the only thing that's real here is this cylinder 2 misfire, and all the passive sporadic ones are just from me screwing with it, except for hide cylinder. That one was for 2. ABS control module, that has nothing to do with what we're doing right now, and multiple cylinder misfire, again related to me screwing with it. Fuel level too low, we just solved that problem. So what we can do is clear all the DTCs. We're going to go through it again after starting it up. So no fault codes found. I can feel the misfire already. Trouble codes. I need a minute. Alright, cylinder 2 misfire detected, so it's immediately present. I didn't even throw a check engine light yet, so this is active static in the background. Within a few minutes, it would throw that check engine light. Or rev it maybe. Check again. So that's what we're looking at. If I drive it, the hide cylinder code will pop up. But as of right now, what we're going to do is start the diagnosis on why the cylinder 2 is misfiring. And we can do this in a number of ways. The first thing we're going to do is double check our spark plug and coil by moving them to another cylinder, clearing the code, and then try to move this misfire to a different cylinder. So what we're going to do is move the spark plug and the coil from cylinder 2, we're going to move it to cylinder 1, come back inside the car, scan it again. If it says cylinder 1 misfire, then we're going to try to narrow it down, either being the spark plug or the coil pack. And if it says cylinder 2 misfire, then we know we have a different problem, most likely related to the fuel injector. This car already went to another shop. The reason it's with me is because so the spark plugs and coils were already changed, so I know that that's not the issue, but for filming purposes we're going to show you guys how to do that. But what the main issue that I'm running into with this car is the other shop diagnosed this as being a burnt valve. So I think it was like quoted $5,000 or something to replace the cylinder head on it, or to service the cylinder head, which is a massive job, and I don't believe that the car would even run the way we just drove it to the gas station and everything. This car would not be able to do that with the burnt valve. Upper valve train issues would throw a lot more codes than just the cylinder 2 misfire. So I don't believe that diagnosis. I think this is more related to a stuck fuel injector. These like to stick close, I believe, so it's not one of those fuel injectors where you're going to shove a borescope down the spark plug tube and see a wet cylinder top or piston top. This one's actually going to, get stuck closed and not fire properly, so that could be what's going on here. Or it could just be that this cylinder specifically has such bad carbon buildup that it's not able to properly fire. So we're going to definitely end up doing a walnut blast regardless. A carbon clean on it, it's due for it. The car has 83,000 miles on it. So carbon clean for sure, and we're gonna move around some fuel injectors to try to move that misfire to probably cylinder 1 again. Put everything back together, come back in the car, and properly diag where this misfire is. Instead of just throwing parts at it, we're going to actually figure out what's wrong before we do anything. We do have all the injectors on hand, just so when we do get the diagnosis, if it does end up being an injector, we are ready for it. But that's pretty much what we're running into. So first things first, I'm going to go outside. Outside of the car, I'm going to start swapping out some spark plugs and coil packs to show you guys how to do that. It's pretty simple, straightforward. And then after that, we're going to start going into some deeper diagnostics on this car. So bear with us. All right, guys, so we're going to start on the passenger side cylinder head. This is where our cylinder 2 is, right here. So in order to remove the coils, first you have to remove the harness. The harness is held in by two T25 Torx screws. They're like plastic tappers. So get yourself a 1/4 inch ratchet with a T25 socket. It's a little tight over here, but these are the screws you're going to be going after to release the harness. And that's how we're going to do it. They should not be in tight. They go into this, it's like a plastic composite valve cover. So don't over torque these when you reinstall them. Alright. So this is what they look like. Very small. Just take them and set them aside. This car has a nice little tray up front to hold stuff on where it doesn't fall. So I do appreciate that, Audi. Okay, a huge thing about Audis and Volkswagens that you see all the time is broken clips like this one, completely missing, or like this one. To release these, it's super common. All Audis, all Volkswagens do it, but it's just because people don't know how to remove them properly. Anyways, you push on the tab, you actually push it in to the coil pack and then out, and that's how you properly remove these without breaking them. Don't go shoving picks into them. That's usually how they get broken, or people just push on it and pull. But that's not how these tabs work. You actually have to push it in to get it past the tab to then get it back. Next thing we're going to do is remove these 2 coil packs. We can leave cylinder 3 alone for now. So I'm going to get the actual special tool to remove these, and I'll show you guys that in just a second. So this is what the coil pack remover tool looks like. If you look on the side of the coil pack, it has these ribs in it. So what you're going to do is go in the front of the coil pack, slide it on until it's on flush from the bottom, and kind of hold it at the wider part of the coil pack. And what I like to do is just grab an extension and use that to get my leverage, and you'll hear it pop. At that point you can slide it off. And you know what we're going to do actually, because I am going to get caught here. I'm just going to unscrew this and this here, and I'm going to move this tube to the side. I'm going to leave the air box in. So this should be held in by, I believe, an 8mm right here and right here. So let me do that quick. Alright, so it's actually a 7mm. They've always been 7mm. I don't know what compelled me to think they were 8. So just loosen up the clamp. You can use a flathead too. I just prefer the ratchet. It's a much more efficient way to get these off quick. I'm just sitting here with the screwdriver for a few minutes. Alright, so that's all I'm going to do. There is a vacuum line in the back that we can remove, but I don't need to get this coil out. So that's how you get the coil out. It's going to be warm, obviously, because we're just running the car. So we know that this is from cylinder 2. This is our questionable cylinder. Now we're going to remove cylinder 1. Same thing. Put the tool on. Grab your extension. Pull up. Like that. Slide it off. Sneak this one out. So now this is cylinder 1. So I have it in order. Next thing we're going to do is move the spark plugs. So I'm going to go in with my spark plug tool and remove both spark plugs, and then we're going to move the spark plug and the coil pack from cylinder 2 into the first cylinder, and the spark plug and the coil pack from cylinder 1 into cylinder 2. So we'll do that and then get back to you. Alright, so we have a 5/8 spark plug socket on a little wobble extension. Wobble just to help us get the angles a little better. This is not a long extension. I'm going to put it into cylinder 2. I'm going to grab my ratchet and turn it to off. And we're going to now remove our second cylinder spark plug. So the spark plug socket should actually grasp the spark plug and remove it for you, so it kind of doesn't fall out. So again, these are new. They're known to be new. There's a little bit of oil on that. I wonder why. So this is our second cylinder. So we're gonna put our first cylinder here and our second cylinder here, so we know what we're doing. Or actually, what I'll do is I just took this out of 2, so I'm gonna put it back in the coil for 2. Okay, now we're gonna do 1. You do the rest by hand. Okay, and I'm immediately going to move it into cylinder 2. Okay, now I'm going to remove my cylinder 1 spark plug, drop it in. This is actually the cylinder 2 spark plug, now in cylinder 1. And once I get it tight, I'm just gonna give it probably an extra quarter turn on with my ratchet. Right there, it's nice and tight. Ratchet kind of binds up, so that's when I know to stop. The torque spec probably is a little bit further beyond that, but you don't really want to screw around without a nice torque wrench torquing spark plugs, because you run the risk of stripping a cylinder head, which you do not want to do. So that's safe and more than fine. Most people run around in cars with under torqued spark plugs actually. All right, so cylinder 2 coil pack going into cylinder 1. Cylinder 1 spark plug or coil pack going into cylinder 2. So just gonna sneak on by here. All right, so they have these rubber tabs on the side, and then they have a matching place to mate. So you can't really put these in incorrectly. I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera, but actually I'll show you. So you have these rubber tabs here, right up here. There's another one on the side. And then if you look down here into the cylinder head, they're gonna line up right here and right here. So watch what I do right now. I'm gonna turn it to where they line up, and then give it a push. And you can kind of hear them snap into place. That snapping sound is actually the coil pack receiving the spark plug. So we're gonna do that with the same thing up front. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we got them in. So we're going to reconnect our harness. To do that, you just kind of give an even push, and I mean, you should hear them all clip in. I heard this one clip in. And just for purposes of diagnosing right now, we're going to just put this back loosely in place, because we will be coming right back in here in a second. So this intake tube to the throttle body can go on, and we don't need to put those bolts in right now. So now we're going to go back inside the car. I'm going to clear that cylinder 2 misfire, and we're going to see if that cylinder 2 misfire stays with cylinder 2 or moves to cylinder 1. If it moves to cylinder 1, we know that we have either a spark plug or a coil issue, and then we can further diagnose it by now moving just the one spark plug or just the one coil to a different location individually, and then going back and checking again. Or if it stays with cylinder 2, we know that the coil pack and the spark plug are not the issue and that we have something else going on, which at that point I'm going to start going after the fuel injector on cylinder 2 and swap testing that to cylinder 1 and then further diagnosing from there. So again, you want to just make sure all these are seated in fully, and they are. So we're going to go inside the car, clear the codes, and check back with you from in there. Alright, so we are back in the car now after changing the spark plug and coil pack from cylinder 1 and cylinder 2. We're exchanging them. So this is the code from before we did that, so we are going to clear DTC. DTC means diagnostic trouble code. We're going to, is the ignition on and the engine off? Yes. DTC is a freeze frame data. Will be deleted. Are you sure you want to continue? Yes. Okay, so no fault codes. So now we're going to start the car up. Okay, I can feel the misfire already. So it's either we're going to have a misfire in cylinder 1 or cylinder 2. No fault codes detected, so this is verifying that that fault code was actually cleared. We'll let it run for a second. And we have a cylinder 2 misfire. So we know at this point that the spark plugs and the coil packs are not our issue. Our issue is something else. So like I said prior, I knew this was going to be the result because the previous technician that worked on it already changed out these spark plugs and coil packs. So that's the situation where people just throw parts at a car and hope it sticks. It did not solve the issue, so money unnecessarily spent. Maybe the car needed a tune-up, so maybe it wasn't entirely in vain, but still did not solve the issue that is present here. So if this is where you end up and your misfire doesn't walk away, then continue watching because we're going to continue further diagnosing what's going on here. If your condition did move to cylinder 1, then simply continue diagnosing by doing exactly what you did, except now break it apart and separate the coil pack and the spark plug and then move them into separate cylinders and see which one misfires after then. And at that point it'll tell you if you need to replace your spark plug or your coil. And depending on if you're replacing your spark plugs or coils, never just replace the one. Spark plugs are replaced in sets. So in this car you buy 6 spark plugs, same thing with coil packs. The second you put a new coil pack in with a bunch of old ones, you're going to start blowing them like crazy. So if you have one bad coil, replace 6 coils. One bad spark plug, replace all your spark plugs. But yeah, so that's that. We're going to continue diagging, so stick with us. We're going to get into now figuring out what could be going on. We're kind of down on temp now, and I want the temp to be hot, so I'm going to go run this thing around until it reaches temp again. And the next step is going to be looking for valve train issues, and the way we're going to do that is by doing a compression test on every cylinder and comparing them, and I'll explain what the numbers should be and how they should relate to each other when we get there. And then we're actually going to do a running compression test, which isn't entirely recommended if you don't really know what you're doing, but if you kind of follow exactly what I'm doing, it is safe, it is fine. And that's gonna be what tells us if there's valve train issues. So once we get this thing back up to temp, we're gonna take out all of the spark plugs and all of the coil packs, and when you do a compression test, you want to remove all of the spark plugs and all of the coil packs, not just the one you're working on, because if you're going to get improper compression readings. The engine should be able to crank freely by itself on its own without any compression. If you have a spark plug still in, you're hindering that compression being able to escape the other cylinders. It's not going to give you a proper reading. So all spark plugs out, all coils out. So when we get there, we'll show you how to get them all out and hook up our compression tester and get to that. Alright, so this is the car running. You can actually see the misfire, the engine's shaking. Just to make it a little bit easier to visually see, I'm going to put this bottle of brake clean on, and you can see how it's kind of shaking back and forth. If the engine was running smoothly, it would not be rocking like that. Okay, so now working on the driver's side of the car, we're gonna grab our T20 again on our 1/4 inch ratchet. The car is back up to temp now, so things are hot. And that's what we want it to be like, so just be careful. You're gonna be working around a hot engine to do this compression test. So remove your T20s and set them aside. On this side, you can see all of the connectors for all of these coil packs are actually still there, which is impressive. It's rare to see an Audi or Volkswagen harness still intact. So you push this back, you push it in, and you pull it out. Sometimes the other ones will jump out with it. That's pretty normal. You can hear it snap, in, out, and none of them are broken, just like that. So now we're gonna remove all 6 of our coil packs. All right, so I'm gonna speed through it this time since you guys already know the drill. And just put them in order. Even though that these were just replaced, try to keep the same spark plug with the same coil in the same cylinder. So I'm just putting them down in order. So I got 4, 5, 6. Now we're gonna go to the passenger side again. Again, remember we left everything loose here, so just gonna pull this off and flip it up. This is the one with the broken harness, so just gonna remove it from the one. Actually at a tough angle to do this right now. In and out. There we go. Just pulling it from the wrong spot. Okay. All right, and now we have cylinder 1. Cylinder 2. You can move cylinder 1 and 2 back. I'm just gonna leave them where they are. Doesn't make a difference. Again, these are brand new. Cylinder 3. All right, now we're gonna go and remove all 6 of our spark plugs. All right, spark plug tool again, same extension. You know the drill already. So we're just gonna quickly zoom through moving all 6 of these spark plugs out. All right, so here I have our OTC compression tester tool. This is the one with the M14 adapter. This goes into that spark plug tube, and then actually has a quick disconnect here. So this is going to connect into here and be nice and tight. And this is how we're going to check our compression. So I'm going to grab the M14. I'm going to start with cylinder 1, and we're just going to screw it in until it's tight. There's an O-ring at the bottom, and so once it gets tight, you want to give it one good turn like that. It doesn't need to be kind of crazy tight. That's more than enough right there. And we're going to grab our compression tester tool, hook it up, and we're going to leave the gauge somewhere easy for you guys to read. So let's see, where would that be? Probably right there.
something like that. All right, so this motor is gonna crank, so I want to put it in a place where it's not gonna fall. Let's actually leave it right there. So I'm gonna go inside. I'm gonna crank this thing over probably 9 times. And you guys are gonna see what it looks like from out here on the gauge. On the second cylinder, we'll show you what I'm doing inside of the car. But yeah, let me go inside, get this thing cranked over, and let's see what compression on cylinder 1 looks like. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention, before we start, you want to get some kind of battery charger or jump pack or something, basically to just assist the battery throughout all these cranks. You're going to be doing, or I'm going to be doing 54 cranks, so that's going to be 9 cranks per cylinder. It's a 6-cylinder car, 9 times 6, 54. So I don't want to straighten the battery out. It's going to die on me completely, I can already tell, if I do that. Plus, it's going to give you an improper compression reading potentially, because if there's not enough power to actually turn the starter, it's not going to get good compression. So the last cylinders you do might be a little bit lower than they actually are, because the battery is not able to perform the same way it was in the first. So I always put some kind of battery assist on when I do compression tests. So right here, 12-volt battery, it's going to do it at 55 amps, and we're going to set it to engine start, and we're going to have it obviously set to start, not charge. So luckily this Audi makes it real easy for me, because right underneath the hood, oh, that's the power cable, I'm going to move that over there. Right underneath the hood to the right, pretty much right in front of the steering wheel, you have your positive terminal here, and you know it's positive because there's a plus, also red, and make it easy, red to red. And then down here you have your ground. This is your chassis ground terminal, and this is going to charge keep our battery charged while we do this test. So I'm going to plug it in. You're going to see it turn on. And let's start compression testing. Alright, so we started with cylinder 4. I might have said cylinder 1 before, but I meant 4, but it's cylinder 1 on this head, so this is cylinder 4. So what you want to do is get a recording of this. I want all of my compression on all of these cylinders to be between 150 and 180. If you look here, this is at 150, 155, 160. It's about 165 pounds. So that is right where I want it to be. So 165 PSI, and we're going to do cylinder 4. So get a recording. You want to remember what all of these are. What we can do now is release the pressure by going like that, and we're going to move this to cylinder 5. The reason I'm starting with this head is because I want to get a reading on the differences between these cylinders here before I move to the side that potentially has a problem. So now we're just gonna make sure this is again tight. It is. Put our quick connect on. Put this in a spot for you guys to see it without it falling. I liked it right here. That was a good spot, huh? Yeah, right there. All right, so we're all set up. I'm gonna go inside, I'm gonna do 9 more cranks. Our charger is still connected. From this time, I'm actually gonna have you guys come inside with me so you can see what I'm doing. So let's meet up inside the car. All right, so now we are inside the Audi. What we're gonna do is put the key in the ignition. We're gonna turn it like we're starting it, and we're gonna let it crank 9 times, and then we're gonna quickly pull it back. You don't want it to get over because you don't wanna screw with your readings too much. So if you leave it in, it's gonna continue cranking. So make sure you pull it out at 9. So I'm gonna do it now. You're gonna see exactly how I do it. I keep my foot on the brake. This car will kind of do it without it, but that's just how I'm comfortable. Doesn't make a difference, but let's do it. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So perfectly 9. Take it out quick, and let's go see what our compression reading is. All right, so we are back with our cylinder 5 compression test. like I said, I want all of these to be between 150 and 180 PSI. And on top of that, one thing I didn't mention, but now is a little bit more relevant because we have a different compression reading here, is I want all of these numbers that I pull for compression on each cylinder to be within 10% of each other. So since the first one was 165 PSI, that gives us about 16.5 PSI in either direction to be within that spec. So when I say 16.5 in either direction, I don't mean 16.5 pounds more than 165. I mean dead center 165. I want 8 1/4 either direction. So as of what we're reading right here, I have 160 pounds. That's within that 8.5 in either direction. So this thing is right where it should be. If it's within the 16.5 fully within either direction, the car is still good. It just is giving you more indication that there might be something going wrong. And that's going to be something more like a blow-by potentially, or bad valve seals or something like that. And then if you have anything worse than that, you have a serious problem, or something like an older engine that's just showing its wear. So this being at that 160 pounds of pressure right now is awesome. So we're going to take our phone back out, and we're going to go back and type in our 160 pounds. And this is cylinder 5. All right, so now we have that recording. Gotta pick this thing back up. Release our pressure. Disconnect it. Move to cylinder 6. Again, just make sure it's tight on that bottom seal, because if it's not, you're going to get an improper reading. Another thing is if you get a, oh, I just dropped a little knob for the Schrader valve. If you get a bad reading, it's always good to double check your bad reading, because sometimes you can get false negative results and you might be crying about it for no reason. So go back, check, make sure your seal is on, it's not ripped, everything's working properly, and it's just good to double verify all the time. So enough talking. I got cylinder 6 already ready to go. I'm gonna leave you guys here this time since you already see what I'm doing, and let's see how cylinder 6 looks. All right, so our 6th cylinder is at about 170 PSI. So again, right where we want it to be, within that 8 1/4 PSI. So this cylinder head is in great condition. There is nothing going on here. We are still gonna go back and double check everything on the passenger side head, because that's the head in question when we go to do a running compression test. But right here, I got valuable data on the driver's side head, and I know everything is fine. So we're gonna leave this head alone. I'm gonna reassemble this, and we're gonna focus all of our attention on that driver's side head. As for now, we're gonna leave it disassembled, because we wanna get this compression test finished with all of the spark plugs out. But when we're done with that on that side, and we begin to do our running compression test, that's when this is, cylinder head over here is just gonna be entirely left alone. So I'm gonna take my recording of 170 PSI on cylinder 6, and we're gonna link back up with you guys in just a bit. All right guys, so now we got you back on the passenger side head. We're gonna start with cylinder 1. So that's the cylinder all the way up front. This is actually cylinder 1 now we're talking about. Make sure it's nice and tight. Again, not too tight. Connect your disconnect, give it a tug, make sure you're good. It might be a little bit, oh actually, you know what I'll do this time? I'll tuck it under here so it can't run away. There we go. So, I'm gonna plug my jump tool back in because I disconnected it for a second. I'll go inside, and start cranking. Alright guys, so at cylinder 1, we are looking at about, I'm going to say that's 165 pounds of compression. I don't like to, decipher what it would be in between. I just round up to the closest one, or down, whichever that may go. So we'll call that 165. Cylinder 1's at 165, which I think pretty much matches up to our first cylinder on the opposite head, so cylinder 4. So that's pretty consistent across the engine. So I'm gonna get that written up in my phone. That's cylinder 1. So awesome. Again, within that spectrum of numbers that we need it to be in. So I'm gonna release that pressure. And now move things over to cylinder 2. This is the cylinder in question. This is one we're gonna be most concerned with the numbers on. So if my numbers come out horribly right now, then that previous technician might have had a point about that valve train issue. Again, they said it was a burnt valve. From what I understand, they did a cylinder leakage test, but only a cylinder leakage test, which I never go and do cylinder leakage tests out of the blue. I always compression test first and then find that there is an issue and then use my cylinder leakage tester after to figure out where that issue is. It just seems like a sketchy story to me, so I'm not entirely buying it that this thing needs a cylinder head. So let's see, this is the moment of truth. Does my cylinder 2 have compression? All right, and there we go. We do have lower compression on cylinder 2. So it appears to be at about 130 pounds of PSI. So that is significantly lower than the other cylinders. So again, I want it to be between 150 and 180 pounds of pressure between all of my cylinders. And I want it also to be, what did I say, that's 130? So I'm gonna write that down on my phone quick. I also want it to be within that 16.5%. So at my highest, I have 170 PSI, so even within that whole scheme of things, 170 minus 16.5 is gonna give me 153.5. That's where I want my lowest to be. So at 150, I'd be comfortable there. So like I said, what we're gonna do now, since we have something going on here, is we are going to double check. So compression can be leaking through a number of places and potentially even a bad fuel injector. So I'm not entirely concerned because it still has compression. This isn't a blown, piston ring or a burnt valve. A burnt valve would give me little to no compression at all. So I'm not entirely convinced still that this is a burnt valve. We just have something clearly going on, which, we knew that was going on because the car is storing in misfire condition. So right here, I'm going to reset everything and I'm going to double check this cylinder. So what I'm gonna do is I'm not just gonna go back in the car and crank it over again. I'm gonna entirely remove my hose. Take it out, clean that O-ring, make sure everything is correct here, reinstall it. All right, make sure it's nice and tight. And we're gonna see if that reading comes out the same, which if everything was right, it should be the same or close. So, oh, I put it in the wrong spot. So we're gonna leave that there. We're gonna make sure this is clear. Okay, let's get another reading on it.
I don't think I got the full 9 cranks on that first time. And another thing that I'm starting to also think is it sounds good. When it cranks, it doesn't give that bad compression sound. So we're over at about 140. So still not great, still not where I want to be. But again, everything I just said regarding there being a clear issue, this is good. So what you do when you have numbers like I just got, which let me double check. So my last time I got 130 pounds, this time I got 140. You're never gonna misread having too high of compression. You can misread having too low of compression. So I'm gonna go back and change this to 140 PSI on my phone on cylinder 2, because the highest reading is always gonna be your most accurate reading. And we're gonna leave this guy alone, and we're gonna finish up and do cylinder 3. All right, so cylinder 3 now. All right. Cool. One thing I'm gonna mention quick is when I was just talking about cylinder 2, I mentioned that compression sounded good. It's kind of one of those things that when you have a cylinder with significantly bad compression, you're gonna know it because the way the car cranks on that cylinder, it's gonna be slow, it's gonna sound different. You'll know. In the future, I'll film what that sounds like, but that's the best advice I can give right now. Is if it sounds like it's no good, chances are it's no good. But always remember that that can also be an issue caused by you not having an external battery assist or jump pack connected. So make sure you got one of these before you start doing one of these. I can't stress that enough. Okay, so I'm gonna go back in now. We're gonna get cylinder 3 done. I might have just called it 6. I don't know, I'm starting to lose my mind a little bit over here. But yeah, I'm gonna get compression on this now. All right, so our cylinder 3 is just where we expect it to be at 100 and let's say 60 PSI over there. So let me get back up on my phone and get my final readings in, which 160 PSI again is within our spec. So our cylinder 2 at 140 PSI is our problem cylinder. Again, I'm not completely convinced that that's a burnt valve yet. What we're gonna do now to actually rule out the valve train is reassemble everything except for cylinder 1 and actually do a running compression test now. So I'll show you guys what that is in a minute, and yeah, we'll link up back to you in just a few. All right, so these are our final compression numbers. I just want to go over with you guys. So cylinder 1 was 65 PSI. Cylinder 2, our cylinder in question, is 140 PSI. Cylinder 3, 160 PSI. Cylinder 4, 165 PSI. Cylinder 5, 160 PSI. And cylinder 6, 170 PSI. So everything here is good except for cylinder 2. So now we need to figure out why. We have now more data about what's going on. We have the extended crank, we have the cylinder misfire on cylinder 2, and now we have lower compression on cylinder 2. I don't want to quite call that low compression because it's still relative to these other cylinders. It's just not where it should be, and we're going to figure out why. And after doing any kind of service here, we are going to redo the compression test on cylinder 2 and see if it goes up. So that will be probably the last thing that we're going to film, is the resolution of the compression issue on cylinder 2. But before we do that, let's get back to the video. We're going to now do our running compression test, and I'll show you guys how to do that. All right, so I just removed our battery assist as we no longer need it because the compression test we will be doing will be running. So I'm going to close up this cylinder head entirely. We have no issues. We already got all of our data out of it. So we are just going to put our spark plugs back in. Along with that, I'm going to go back to the passenger side head, and I'm gonna put back in
my rear 2 spark plugs. I'm going to leave cylinder 1 out. So I'm going to get data now on a running compression test on cylinders 1, 2, and 3 separately. So I'm going to quickly retorque all of these spark plugs down and put all the coils in, and we'll link up back with you guys when that's done. Alright, so now that we got to this point, I'm going to do a little bit of explaining. So I got the 2 coil packs for cylinder 2 and 3 back in, and I'm going to put in my compression tester into cylinder 1. And this is going to be a running compression test again. So I'm going to hook this up. Cylinder 1. I'm going to move down here. One thing that people commonly forget when they do running compression tests on cylinder heads that I just want to, I didn't want to just do on camera and have you guys forget, is you still got to plug the cylinder head or the coils on the same cylinder head in, or else the whole cylinder is going to misfire. So you're just not running that front coil. That's it. Alright, so I'm going to go inside the car. What I'm going to be doing this time is actually starting the car. I'm going to give it enough time to build compression. You're going to see this thing going crazy because it's only going to build compression on the stroke of the cylinder. So I'm probably going to walk over here, check out my gauge, sit for a second with it, go back in the car, turn it off, and by that time it's going to be settled. So I'm going to go do that right now. Alright, so we are going to watch our compression build, and we're going to let it build until it becomes stable. It should be right around 100 pounds that it gets stable, and then it's going to, fall after that. So I'm going to go back into the car and shut it off. Alright, so I got my phone out again, and I'm going to go cylinder 1 again, and 100 pounds of PSI running. And I want this to be between about 80 and 120. So 100 PSI is pretty much exactly where I want it to be. 100 PSI, cylinder 1. All right, more valuable data. We're gonna do the same thing on cylinder 2. Now again, the one in question. So what we're gonna do is release the pressure. Gonna release our tool per usual. This just pops out of there all the time, so I'm just gonna leave it out. I keep putting it back in for no reason. We're going to put our spark plug and our coil back into cylinder 1. We're going to remove our cylinder 2 spark plug and coil and insert our compression tester. So cylinder 1 spark plug back into cylinder 1. Spark plug tool on the spark plug, tightening it up. I like to just do it by hand, it's a lot easier. And then tighten it fully with the wrench. Cylinder 1 coil pack. Okay, remove cylinder 2. I'm using the special tool now. It's just quicker. cylinder 2 spark plug is out. Remember, always reconnect your coil packs. Okay, just like that. Compression tester into cylinder 2. Again, right now I'm doing a running compression test. What we're doing is pretty much ruling out valve train issues. If you had a burnt valve or something like a spring on a lifter pop or be bad, oh, there goes my ratchet. This would show in a running compression test. So you would know that there's something wrong inside the cylinder head by low compression with the car running. So again, this one's probably more valuable than that 140 pounds that we figured out the first time. If this is not within that 100 or 80 to 120 pounds, we got a problem. I think this is going to be closer to 80 if it's going to be consistent with that previous diagnosis that there's something wrong in the top end. If it's at 100, then we know that it's something else. If it's higher, it's not going to be, because we know we have a lower compression. So regardless, this is off. I know it's off. It's fine. The throttle body's getting, everything's still plugged in. So we're just doing quick starts. So don't worry about having this off. If you choose to put it back on, that's up to you by all means. It just would be a pain for me to take off and put on every single time. So that being said, I'm going to go back inside. We're going to do our cylinder 2 running compression test right now. Alright, so we are building compression, and again, like I just said, I wanted it to be right around 80, and I expected it to be around 80, and it's literally at about 80. I'm going to go shut it off, and we'll see where it stabilizes at. Alright, so as predicted, I didn't actually mean for me to be that spot on, so that's just, you know, by coincidence. So it is actually at 80 psi, so right where I expected it to be. So I'm not entirely worried about it still. It's, again, just proving that there's something wrong with the cylinder. We know that's the case. If it was at 60, 30, anything from 0 to 80, actually anything from 0 to even like 70, I would be kind of bent out of shape and be like, all right, we're gonna take this head off. 70 to 80, that would be the kind of range where I would kind of just be sitting here scratching my head. And again, 80 to 120, we know that we have an issue, but it's probably not that crazy. So we're gonna release the pressure and move this to cylinder 3 to verify that cylinder 3 should be right around 100 pounds. All right, so we just went ahead, since, you know, we're keeping the same theme going, so we're not gonna screw with it at all. We just removed cylinder 3, spark plug and coil. We reinstalled cylinder 2, spark plug and coil. We installed the compression tester into cylinder 3 again, and then of course we connected our electrical connectors back into our cylinder 1 and 2 coil packs. So that being said, I'm going to quickly go over. We'll keep this thing moving on, you guys. I'm going to get this thing started up. We're going to see where this compression lies, and it should be right around 100 pounds. So let's check it out. Alright, so it's starting to stabilize even higher than 100 pounds. I'm going to give it another couple seconds, and then I'm going to go shut it off and see where it lays. Alright, so this one's even better. We have a running compression test that landed right at 115 pounds. So, I think, what was the first one at? Right around 100, right? So, cylinder 3, running compression, 115 PSI. Okay, so lastly, what we're gonna do is remove our compression tester from cylinder 3. At this point, we have everything we need to know about the cylinders from the spark plug coil side of things. So actually we can fully reassemble these and we can leave them alone. We know that they're all new spark plugs, they're all new coils. We have got all of our data on what is going on from them, which is going to be very valuable in terms of further diagnosing this. So what I got out of this is that there is a issue a little bit larger than a regular misfire from this cylinder 2, which we already knew, because if it was just a small misfire, it would have just been something related to a coil pack or a spark plug. So no new information there. We have our relative readings where we can actually see the percent of compression drop between multiple cylinders. We know that the rest of the engine is running very healthily. And what the most valuable thing is that I think we gathered is that I don't believe that there's a valve train issue. So not only from driving the car, but even the numbers were still up, you know, in a good range. So honestly, what I'm gonna do next is go after that cylinder 2 fuel injector. So I'm gonna reassemble what we got going on here, and we're gonna leave everything alone. I might go back later, maybe not on video, and actually make sure all the spark plugs that I removed are actually torqued to the specification. And I'll probably mention what that spec is later, if I don't forget. But as for now, this can all go back together. You can put your 2 T20s back in on the harness over here. And the next thing we're going to do is remove the supercharger and pull the cylinder 2 injector and the cylinder 1 injector and swap them and see if we can get that misfire cylinder 2 code to follow. If it ends up on cylinder 1 when we reassemble, then we know that the injector is the issue. If it doesn't, then we know we have something else going on, and we'll continue to further diag by either doing a cylinder leakage test, start looking into things with the borescope. There's plenty of things that we can continue doing. So we're just going to continue filming on this thing until we got the problem solved. So that's gonna be pretty much it for this video. So this video pretty much just consisted of us doing a compression test and a running compression test, and teaching you guys how to swap test spark plugs and coils, get an idea of what this series is going to be about. Next part of this series is going to be pretty involved. It's going to be removing the supercharger just to do the spark plugs and coils. Just to do the fuel injectors, and then actually reassembling it to test it, which is a lot of work just to get a little bit of information. But it's valuable, and I think it's worth showing you guys. Most people wouldn't do that, so I think it's going to be a cool extension of this video. We're going to be taking that supercharger off again afterwards, regardless, obviously, if there's an issue. We're going to have to because of the fuel injector. But aside from that, we will be walnut blasting it. We're going to be doing a carbon clean. We're going to be changing the water pump and thermostat. We're also going to be changing the crankcase breather box and a few other things while we're in there. Oh, the oil for the supercharger, and obviously a drain and fill of new coolant for this 3-liter V6 TFSI. So thanks for watching. We're gonna link back up with you guys in a bit. We're gonna go eat some dinner and then get right back onto this. So might be a week or two before you guys see this, but it's only gonna be about an hour or so before we start getting into the nitty-gritty part of this diag. So see you guys in a few.